Number 5. Lipstick warning. Now, Stella McDonald and her now ex-husband used to love exploring abandoned structures when they were together. I remembered one that they described as a shack that was about a mile away from their home. To set the scene, the grass and trees were so grown over and tall that it was hard even getting to said house. Her ex managed to get a window open though, and that's how they got in, because the doors were completely awful. Mildew, you name it. Ugh. I think this is where I interject a warning to not do this yourself, don't do this at home, and if you ever feel the need to urban explore, for the love of everything, please do it safely. So Stella described what they found as a time capsule, with piles of expensive furniture and stuff covered with really dusty sheets. Apparently though, everything looked really high quality and expensive. Like even the wallpaper was nice. It was creepy how it seemed like the former residents just walked away from all of it in the 1950s or 60s, and how awful the exterior seemed in comparison. Once again, she called it a shack, not me. So the kitchen was upstairs, which was pretty odd, but the duo ventured up there, and then there's this huge arch opening into like a gentleman's type man cave. Stella made a note that once again, there was a plethora of expensive furniture and who knows what else. So she stood in the archway while her ex rummaged through all of the unknown clutter. Now off to the side of the arch was a huge mirror leaning against the wall. So she used it, she wanted to check her hair, make sure there was no spider webs in it. Honestly, just the thought of that makes me want to take a shower. No, thank you. Stella took maybe 3 steps away from the mirror to tell her ex that she wanted to leave because it felt like there was a presence right beside her. And when she returned in front of the mirror, she saw that the words "Get out" were suddenly scrawled out in bright pink lipstick that very much hadn't been there before. Now she's sworn on everything that it hadn't been there. She would have noticed it, and also would have noticed if there was another presence in the room with her and her husband. So this shock caused Stella to scream, leap back into a kitchen table, and then obviously, crash, kaboom, fall. So her ex came running over, because, this got his attention, but Stella was too scared to form words by this point. So she just continued to point at the mirror and babble until the duo safely got away. Yeah, hard pass. Also, congrats on him being your ex. It's not like he cared for you in this moment though. Number 4, death becomes you. So yeah, there was this once beautiful Greek revival home in Uniontown, Alabama, but now apparently it looks like it's being swallowed up by the earth, and its tragic past certainly lives up to the haunting aesthetic. Look folks, the term shack is subjective, and I'm about to stretch that meaning beyond its limit today. So in January of 1994, the remains of, let's see if I can get this right, bleep-year-old Alan Lucy were found buried beneath the front porch of the Hardy Coleman house, or as it's better known, online, the Lucy Murder house. So Alan, who lived in the home with his adoptive parents, Philip and Margaret Lucy, disappeared without a trace in May of 1985. In the months that followed, Jason Lucy, their biological son, told classmates that his father killed Alan and buried him in the backyard. For years, nobody believed Jason's story, even though rumors about the Lucy family swirled around town long before Alan disappeared. Decades after, Alan Lucy's killer was brought to justice, the house has still not recovered, largely due to environmental injustices that have driven many residents out of Uniontown and left those who remain fighting for justice of their own. So what's left? Oh, nothing crazy, just a house in the middle of a forest. Haunted beyond belief. Lots of bad mojo there. Number 3, a hiking adventure gone wrong. So this tale comes along courtesy of Grant Charbonneau, who along with his buddy Mike embarked on a hiking adventure on the day after he turned 18. So armed with a compass to navigate the labyrinth of trails, the duo set out to conquer the longest route leading to a camping spot deep within the forest. The color-coded paths ensured they stayed on course, but fate had other plans for the friends. As they ventured along the red route adorned with a tent emblem, a dilapidated sign hinted at an old dirt road, tempting them to deviate from their original plan. Intrigued by the mystery it promised, they forged ahead, discovering an abandoned place concealed by nature's, reclaiming of it. A desolate structure covered in graffiti and bearing ominous signs of warning. Let's just see, what did it have? Oh right, the classic, keep out, private property, and trespassers will be, kaboomed, for lack of a better word. Undeterred by the foreboding messages, the boys breached the door's defenses, revealing a time-forgotten interior frozen in the mid-1980s. Dust-covered relics, wild boar, and stag heads adorning the walls painted a picture of abandonment and eerie stillness. Now their curiosity pushed them further. Mike ascended upstairs while Grant explored the kitchen. The disconcerting ambiance heightened as they stumbled upon a locked door beneath the stairs. Now, this is where I personally would be running for the hills, because if something is locked, it should probably stay that way, but I'm sure you and I can both guess how this story is about to go, otherwise I wouldn't be mentioning it. Determined, the boys broke the chains and uncovered a hidden staircase leading to a basement. And not just any basement, one harboring a bizarre secret. So their flashlights illuminated a room filled with glass cases, each veiled in layers of dust. As they wiped away the grime, they were met with grotesque wax-like figures clad in various dresses. Now finally, we've got a chill running down their spines, but oh, just wait till we get to the center case. There, suspended in eternal bondage, was a clothed human figure, a haunting display of the macabre. A yellow-stained envelope nearby contained a handwritten note, revealing the twisted mind behind this morbid collection. The author, a self-proclaimed collector, detailed a dark journey from taxidermist to a connoisseur of preserved human beauty. His words, not mine. Each victim, immortalized in wax, became a macabre masterpiece in this gruesome gallery. Overwhelmed by revulsion, the boys finally made their escape, leaving the forest and its secrets behind. The note, a testament to the deranged mind that lurked in the shadows, became their only link to a truth that the authorities struggled to unravel. Now, as the guys sat in the safety of Grant's car, the weight of what they witnessed began to sink in. So this forest, once a realm of adventure, kinda now bore the stain of unspeakable horrors. And the abandoned house stood as a silent witness to the awfulness within. Sorry, I was losing my words there because, like, how on earth do you describe that? The echoes of that day linger in the, depths of their memories. A chilling reminder that, maybe don't adventure where you're not supposed to go. Seriously, folks, beware! Number 2, captive room. Did you seriously think I was gonna do a whole list on abandoned places that would terrify authorities without having a single story from actual authorities? Come on, folks. Who do you take me for? I like my credible sources, and this one just happens to hit a little close to home. Oh, how close, you ask? Well, as an Ontario resident, a story that took place in Pickering seems pretty close enough. So back in 2011, on, December 19th to be exact, Durham police reported that they'd found what appeared to be a confinement room in an old abandoned farmhouse east of Toronto. Police said the room in the Northwest Pickering home was recently built and looked like it was solely designed to hold someone captive. Now, investigators at the time were trying to figure out if the room was used to actually confine somebody or if it was just designed for another purpose and they were, over-exaggerating. So they mentioned one possibility is that it might have been built as a prop for an amateur filmmaker. So this room was stumbled upon by contractors surveying the property because, it was slated for demolition more than 2 weeks prior to the report. At the time, Durham police spokesman Dave Selby said that the home had been abandoned for so long that the focus wasn't on the original owners, but on anyone who may have been seen driving in the area or any other suspicious activity. They're obviously down there because it's somewhere where no one would check. You could stick someone in this room and lock them in. Now, police didn't rule anything out, but they weren't able to determine at the time if anybody was ever held in the room. Once again, we've got our cop spokesman. Our forensic guys went down and took all kinds of samples of anything they could, find to figure out if it was used and how it was used. But at this point, it's still under investigation, and we really don't know if it was used for a criminal purpose or not. So 2 weeks after the room was discovered, the farmhouse burned down in what police described as a suspicious fire. Now, they've never laid charges in connection to the fire, but, Robert White was eventually charged, arrested, and pleaded guilty to breaking and entering with intent. He planned on kidnapping a woman named Gwen Armstrong, a friend of his ex-wives, because she provided his ex-wife with emotional and financial support after their separation. Yikes! Number 1, somebody found a body. A group of young adults in South Carolina back in 2021 got quite the scare when they were exploring an allegedly haunted house and wound up discovering a dead body in a freezer. According to a local media report, the strange incident occurred in the town of Norway as 8 youngsters were riding ATVs in a remote part of the community. So at some point in the midst of their adventure, they came upon an abandoned shack, which is rumored to be, haunted. And as adventurous folks are, likely to do, they were like, hey, let's go see if there's any ghosts inside. However, as they were looking around the vacant residence, one of the members of the group stumbled upon a sizable freezer and decided, let's see what's inside. Upon opening the cold storage unit, he was greeted by an ungodly smell, which he initially thought was just, rotting meat. Technically he was right, although the contents of the freezer were far more gruesome than, some old pork chops. That's because on closer examination, he realized that the meat was wearing jeans and socks. So the would-be ghost hunters called the cops, who arrived on the scene to collect the body for an autopsy to figure out the identity of the deceased. It is believed that the body inside the freezer had been there for months and could possibly be the victim of foul play. As for the adventurous youngins, it would seem that they are now haunted by something far more unsettling than a ghost, the stench from the rotting corpse. One of them said, I heard that once you smell a human, you can't ever forget it. And he's like, yeah, I can still smell it right now.
Number 5. Eastern State Penitentiary. Starting off the list is Eastern State Penitentiary. It was a prison built in Philadelphia that wanted to stand out from the rest of the American penal system, trying out a new method of punishment called the Pennsylvania system. Well, do tell, what is the Pennsylvania system? It's not pleasant and has absolutely nothing to do with cheesesteaks. The Pennsylvania system refers to imposing the prisoners to solitary confinement all of the time, 24/7. The prisoners lived alone, ate alone, exercised alone, and were only ever allowed to interact with prison guards. When they were being transported or moved around the prison, the guards would make them don black hoods. Guess it's not nearly as sunny in Philadelphia as Frank Reynolds would have you believe. Now, this might not surprise you, but this was not a terribly popular system with inmates. The miserable conditions made the inmates' lives horrendous, but the prison didn't care too much. The system only ended up collapsing in 1913 due to overcrowding in the prison. But Eastern State didn't let this stop them from acting sadistically, and really, if anything, just just inspired them to get a little more creative. Prisoners would have their tongues chained to their wrists. Unruly, troublesome prisoners would be chained to chairs for days on end. They would douse prisoners in freezing cold water, and perhaps worst of all, would trap prisoners into a pit they affectionately nicknamed the Hole, where they'd be kept in the darkness for weeks on end. I'm really not sure if that's any better than the original system. In 1970, after decades of terrorizing its inmates, Eastern State let the last of its inmates free and closed the gates permanently, only to crack them back open a little bit as a tourist location, reopening its walls as a haunted attraction. Due to its horrific history and ominous atmosphere, the prison was rebranded as a haunt, with legends saying that you'll hear all kinds of disembodied laughter, screaming and crying, ghostly figures, shadows moving across the wall, and unexplained footsteps. And if you're looking for more scary stories about prisons or really about anything, then you're at exactly the right place. Stay subscribed to Top 5 Scary for more new scary videos every day. Number 4. Ohio State Reformatory. Ohio State is the picture of a perfect prison. I mean, literally, it was the set for the Shawshank Redemption, so it's kind of a big deal in the prison world. The prison first opened its gates in 1890 and was initially an intermediate penitentiary, a facility for first-time offenders who were deemed too violent to be in other prisons. The inmates were taught basic trades for release and reintegration. However, the prison population started to swell too much by the 20th century, and the reformatory was forced to accept inmates convicted of serious crimes. While day-to-day operations weren't too terribly out of the norm for any other prison, one event in the 1930s may have contributed greatly to the paranormal rumors surrounding it. In the late 1930s, a riot broke out in the East Cell Block, and as punishment, the guards rounded up 120 rioters to share 12 solitary confinement cells together for a week without any food or water. Obviously, this led to multiple prisoners passing away, and even more being broken down to the point of madness. Just outside the prison stands 215 numbered graves, a monument to all the horror that the prison had experienced over the years. Since then, the prison itself has reformed, rehabilitating itself much like Eastern State as a haunted house. Visitors and tour guides who walk through Ohio State report feeling inexplicable chills while walking through the prison's walls. Witnesses say they hear cell doors slam and see dark figures. Those brave enough are welcome to take the prison's tour and attempt to track down spirits of their own, or if you're feeling particularly festive for the Halloween season, you can try the Haunted Prison Experience, a guided tour replete with animatronics and actors for that haunted house feel. Number 3. Missouri State Penitentiary. Once dubbed the bloodiest 47 acres in America, it is no surprise at all that Missouri State Pen is home to all kinds of rumors to be haunted by the souls of its former inmates. The prison was nicknamed The Walls, and shortly after its construction was already home to 2,000 inmates, doubling that size in the progressing years. The prison was home to several riots and escape attempts, with the most infamous attempt occurring in 1954, when some 2,500 inmates participated in a massive day-long riot. 4 buildings burned and the National Guard was called in. Shockingly, out of this, only 4 inmates were fatally injured during this event, and none managed to escape, lending to the prison's hard reputation. Now, the prison has always been reported to be haunted, even during its operation, with both guards and inmates during its service claiming to see spectral apparitions. Most of the ghost stories come out of the prison's oldest building, the A building, home to some of the crueler punishments, including an underground room called the Dungeon, a dank, hostile basement with a low ceiling forcing prisoners into a subservient position where the only light that could be observed was a slit through the door. Modern visitors to the dungeon complain of the disgusting odor of bodies that's pungent, and they feel like they're being watched. Disembodied voices have even been picked up by EVP monitors while wandering through the dungeon. In the control room, visitors report occasionally seeing a spirit called Fast Jack, a medical practitioner from the prison's operating days, who can be seen appearing as a ghastly figure holding a clipboard and a white lab coat, frantically scurrying around the control room trying to carry out some duty from when he was alive, slamming lockers and opening doors. Several ghost hunting groups over the years have investigated the Missouri State Pen, including legendary ghost hunting hero Zach Baggins and the Ghost Adventures crew, finding mysterious voices and what looked like shadow people wandering the halls. Although the bloodiest 47 acres in America might have dried up and the walls are now open to the public, for the inmates who are still impounded there, it's as terrifying as ever. Number 2. West Virginia Penitentiary. Almost heaven. West Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountains, and haunted prisons. The Appalachians might be home to one of the most beautiful parts of the United States, but West Virginia Penitentiary is anything but. In 1863, after West Virginia seceded from Virginia Classic. The new fledgling state needed its own prison, and Moundsville, West Virginia was chosen as the home for their new state pen. The prison's conditions were unlivable. West Virginia Penn frequently made the Department of Justice's top 10 violent prisons in the country. Idea for a new video. An infamous spot in the prison was known as the Sugar Shack, a small rec room for the inmates that served as a hotbed for all kinds of violent illegal activity. The prison is also home to a famous electric chair that an inmate was forced to build, nicknamed Old Sparky. Old Sparky is still standing there today. In the 1950s, the prison was so overcrowded that 3 prisoners at a time would be shoved into one cramped 7 by 5 foot cell. The men were kept like animals in cages. Riots and violent outbursts were fairly commonplace. The prison was overcrowded, dilapidated and run down, and staffed by overwhelmed guards. Eventually, the prison would be forced to open its gates, decommissioning as a prison and shipping all of its inmates elsewhere. The building still stands and is used as a training facility for law enforcement officers, but it's been said that the spirits of those whose lives ended here still wander. Hunters report equipment malfunctioning walking by the Sugar Shack or any of the cell blocks where the more violent inmates were housed. Reports of banging on the walls late at night, as well as random screams, are fairly commonplace too. The prison was reportedly haunted while inmates still populated it, with some of the earliest stories of hauntings stemming from the 1930s. It's thought that the prison was built on top of an indigenous gravesite of the Adena people, which has led to some speculation as perhaps an explanation for the hauntings. Like most of the prisons on this list, if you're curious enough yourself, West Virginia Penn is available to visit for tours, and you can even pop by the Sugar Shack and Old Sparky. And finally, number 1, Alcatraz. Alcatraz might very well be the United States' most infamous prison. On Alcatraz Island, just outside of San Fran, lies the notorious jail, built to house America's most deadly inmates, like Al Capone, Arthur Barker, or George Kelly. It was home to a legendary breakout that was made into a film, Escape from Alcatraz, and also set the stage for Michael Bay's action classic The Rock, which was about breaking into Alcatraz. The prison was built to drain the hope out of inmates, to break the spirits of the most rebellious inmates, and was legendary for its awful conditions. Tiny cramped cells, indifferent guards, and frequent bouts of violence and riots were all commonplace. It was once referred to as the Great Garbage Can of San Francisco, where every other federal prison dumped their worst apples. So it's no surprise, given its brutal conditions, that the island is home to several spirits and hauntings from souls that just can't move on. Most ghost investigators report that the hottest spot for paranormal activity in the building is cell 14D, a cell that was also nicknamed the Hole. Gotta wonder if they borrowed that from Eastern State. It was where the most unruly prisoners would be kept when they were being difficult. It's been said that even walking by 14D, you'll immediately feel something's wrong, as if a dark presence or energy is in the room with you. An inmate once spent his last days in 14D, screaming that he was being hunted by an otherworldly creature. Visitors report hearing crying and moaning while walking through cell blocks A, B, and C, where most of the population would have been kept. It's said that a ghost named the Butcher walks through these halls after an inmate named Butcher Malkowitz, a mob hitman, was whacked by another inmate. Now, if this isn't enough haunting for you, some dark tourists also report hearing discordant, disembodied banjo strumming, thought to be a holdover from the spirit of Al Capone, who used to play his banjo in the prison band. Although the prison was decommissioned in 1963, it reopened shortly after, now as a museum and a haunted tour popular with Bay Area locals and visitors curious about learning about one of America's darkest prisons and perhaps its most haunted. Visit if you dare, but just make sure you're able to leave.
In 5th place, we have the Krampnits Eagle. Alrighty, time for the usual disclaimers, because the tube that is you does not like people chatting about all things World War II, so this girlie has to be kinda goofy to get around that and get my point across. We're gonna chat about the bad guys, whose name starts with an N, but I'll be referring to them as Yahtzees. If you have an issue with that, take it up somewhere else. I've just gotta follow the interweb rules. Krampnits in Germany was used as a cavalry training center during the First World War, and then as a motorized vehicle barracks by the bad German guys during the Second World War, housing motorbikes, tanks, and armored vehicles. When the Russians took Berlin, the Germans fled, handing themselves over to the British and US forces rather than be captured by the Red Army, who soon claimed Krampnits as their own. Yahtzee imagery, especially with the big bad symbol, whose name starts with an S, was banned in Germany after the war, and rightfully so. I know it wasn't originally a big bad symbol, I'm quite informed on the history of it and the name and different pronunciations, but Trust me, that's just the easiest way to get my point across. I think I'm doing enough dancing around words right now. I don't want to make anyone's head spin, least of all my own. Examples in public places were destroyed, and it is still illegal to display them outside of authorized exhibitions. However, at Krampnits, this original and painstakingly crafted mosaic inlaid with gold leaf remained for decades. Some speculated the Russians may have kept it as a trophy of sorts, explaining its remarkable survival. But it remained there even after the Russians finally abandoned the site in 1992. The Krampnits eagle appears to have been the very last genuine example of its kind. It was a haunting reminder of the reality of humanity's darkest days. It was eventually destroyed in the mid-2010s, and while I don't believe that Yahtzee stuff should be paraded about, it is kind of a shame that such intricate art has been lost to time. In fourth place, we have pickled creatures. Reminds me of right after high school, when I was helping to clean out my grandma's basement and found jars of pickled unknowns that had been pickled like before I was born. I was very grateful that none of the jars were open or broken, because who knows what they had turned into by that point. Hoarding is genetic, and I am determined to break the chain of women from that side of my family tree drowning in belongings. Alrighty, back on track for now, I promise. Blame my ADHD. Anderlecht Veterinary College in Brussels was built in 1912 in a pretty Belgian neo-Renaissance style, but left abandoned in 1991 when the whole campus moved location to the eastern Belgian town of Liège. Gosh, neo-Renaissance architecture is so stunning, don't you think? Feel free to let me know in the comments what your favorite architecture style is. It could be a fun debate. The various buildings, which once contained pens for cattle and cages for primates and other mammals, were gradually converted, but one remained empty long after the others. Upstairs was a grand lecture hall complete with rows of plush red theater-like chairs, while beautiful marble staircases and brass banisters adorned the other floors. The kind of place, you just want to marvel at and curl up in, just to imagine lives that came before yours. Down in the basement, however, lurking in a dark and long disused room, were hundreds of macabre specimens of animals preserved in glass jars. I'm talking baby pigs, cows, and even parts of dogs, cats, and horses were among them. I'm glad my research elaborated on part of, because for a moment I was trying to picture a container large enough to hold a horse, and it was kinda terrifying. Jawbones, internal organs, and some whole animals all waited to greet any unsuspecting explorer, with their glassy, faded eyes staring out through the yellowish tint of formaldehyde. Good old formaldehyde. Some were smashed and laid rotting on tables and floors, making for a truly bizarre and disturbing sight, especially down there in the darkness, and only lit by torchlight. Also, imagine the smell. Okay, moving on before I gag from my overactive imagination taking over. In third place, we have a mummified body. Okay, Alexa, you can do it. You can fight the urge to hurl. Back in August of 2022, police in Milwaukee were asking for the public's help in identifying a man whose body was found in an abandoned building, and yep, you guessed it, most of the body was mummified. The remains were found on August 10th at 231 West Burleigh Street. Apparently the body was found by a YouTuber, but no clue as to who it might have been. Amy, the lead forensic investigator at the Milwaukee County Medical Examiner's Office, said the body had no identification on it. The medical examiner's office said a majority of the remains were mummified, except for the head, feet, and one hand. Because of the mummification, the medical examiner's office was able to identify tattoos on the body and submit them into a database. According to an investigation report from that examiner's office, the building was a multi-use building, with a church on the first floor and rooms upstairs, but had long been abandoned according to that report. Now, this spokesperson said the person appears to be a black male based on the features discovered in the autopsy. The body also had tattoos and 5 rings on the fingers. One of the tattoos on the left arm says King, and another on the right arm has the letters SAVA. The body had further tattoos, but they were too hard for investigators to distinguish. The man was also wearing a red allergy bracelet that was, commonly used in hospitals. According to officials, the man had on multiple layers of clothing, including athletic pants and long underwear. He was also wearing what appeared to be like 2 jackets, so lots of layers. According to the autopsy report, from what they could tell, he didn't really have any injuries, and there was no signs of drug use. Fun fact, bodies left in hot, freezing environments can typically mummify in about 2 weeks, while the process typically takes a couple of months in enclosed locations. Remains in mild environments take about 3 months. When a person dies, the countdown to decomposition begins, as digestive enzymes start breaking down cells inside the body. In most cases, enzymes need to be in an aqueous environment to work, so if the fluids are removed, decomposition slows down. During spontaneous mummification, the body loses water more rapidly than the enzyme's destructive actions can operate. Bodies buried in crypts can accidentally mummify if ventilation, is a thing. Not every part of the body mummifies at the same time though. Like some internal organs, like the heart, take a lot longer to dry out, which makes sense. Whereas the hands, toes, and scrotum, are among the fastest body parts to dry out. Like I said before, the environment can speed up the process, often through extreme temperatures or pH levels that slow down the enzyme activity. Sometimes the soil surrounding the body plays a big part as well, either through osmosis or because heavy metals in the dirt can impede the enzymes. Even clothes can help mummification because they act as a wick that absorbs bodily fluids from the skin. In addition to protecting the remains from the body's process of decomposing, the environmental conditions also have to defend against external threats like bacteria, fungi, and animals in order to ensure that a mummy will last. Figured that would all be worth learning about because why not? Am I still queasy? Sure, but it was worth it. In second place, we have the haunted crane mirror. So dating back to 1833, St. Bridget's Asylum in Ireland is among the oldest surviving examples of such buildings. It first opened its doors in, 1833 as the Connaught District Lunatic Asylum and was considered one of the earliest of the Irish district asylums, hailing a new progressive role in mental health for Ireland, stating that it would care for the curable lunatics. I know that's out of date terminology, but it's a direct quote from history, not my own words. Hey, under that hospital standards, I'd fall under that category myself. Until recent history, ADHD was something people could grow out of, and that was something I was taught as a kid. I more so grew into mine, but that's not our point today. With the deinstitutionalization of mental health and the constant overcrowding, St. Bridget's Psychiatric Hospital was forced to close its doors in 2013. Designed in a prison-like radial plan from grim gray stone, by the 1920s it was grossly overcrowded. Designed originally for 840 patients, but holding almost 1,500. Sadly, this was the norm for many institutions, and not the exception. While many started off as well-meaning, and this was, all over the world, demand was just too high and the pressure to overfill was given into. So there are 5 main styles of asylum design: the corridor, pavilion, echelon, colony, but I'll elaborate more on the radial plan I mentioned for this place. The radial plan saw the long wings of the asylum radiate outwards from a central point, thus reflecting the style of prisons of that era. This style was considered inhumane even in its day, due to the lack of natural light, circulation of air, and space for airing courts. So, okay, maybe this specific asylum never had good intentions. Like all good mysteries, the crane mirror discovered in one of the rooms by urban explorers posed some intriguing questions. Standing alone in an otherwise unremarkable room, with its strange seashell motif and intricate dancing carved wooden cranes, it stood around 12 feet tall and suggested something perhaps more at home in a ballet school. But in the 19th century, and within an asylum, that explanation seemed most unlikely. Larger than any door or window in that room, I kinda wonder how they even managed to get it in there. But also, why go to such trouble? Was it some sort of strange passion project installed at the request of a former medical superintendent? Could there really have been ballet classes in an asylum, or was it part of some strange type of therapy? Perhaps it covered up like a doorway or something else hidden behind it, and if so, what? No satisfactory answer has yet been found. Explorers have mentioned that that specific room felt ice cold when they were in it, almost as if some sort of spirit had attached themselves to the area, which sounds accurate to me. While I couldn't find a death rate for the asylum, just assume it was high, and at least some poor soul passed there when they shouldn't have. I feel like I'm forgetting something. It'll come to me. Oh right, a different urban explorer found an old abandoned coffin sitting alone in the basement, which she thankfully discovered was empty. Personally, I don't think I would have dared open the thing. I'm too disgusted by what could be, and fearful of curses, but all the power to her. In first place, we have the West Park Asylum Brain Matter. Time to travel to another asylum, West Park Asylum, and this time to the abandoned mortuary and pathology labs, which sat nestled among the trees in a corner of the site. It had once been tucked away behind the asylum's chapel, but that was demolished back in the 1980s to make way for a staff car park, because priorities. Parking over history. Being home to up to 2,545 patients, death visited the asylum regularly, and the mortuary fridges had room for up to 12 bodies to be stored at any one time. Something about that ratio makes me think the morgue got overfilled quite a bit. One could wander the shabby abandoned wards of the asylum after closure and read the old logbooks that described patients dying in the night or after a fall or injury. Fluid and tissue samples were taken from some patients and stored in boxes or on glass slides, including chunks of brain, sealed in paraplast blocks, which is a waxy paraffin-based substance for later study. Being unmarked, no one knows who they once belonged to, what they died of, or what lessons might have been learned from them. Anything that remained would have been eventually thrown away or burned, along with all the other fascinating artifacts this crazy asylum once contained. I'm both fascinated and grossed out by this.
Coming in at 5, Hashima Island, Japan. Hashima Island is an abandoned island lying about 15 kilometers from the city of Nagasaki in southern Japan. It is one of 505 uninhabited islands in Nagasaki Prefecture. The island's most notable features are its abandoned concrete buildings, undisturbed except by nature and the surrounding sea wall. While the island is a symbol of the rapid industrialization of Japan, it is also a reminder of its history as a site of forced labor prior to and during the Second World War. 1954. The island reached a peak population of 5,259 in 1959, and in 1974, with the coal reserves nearing depletion, the mine was closed and all of the residents departed soon after, leaving the island effectively abandoned for the following 3 decades. Interest in the island then re-emerged in the 2000s on account of its undisturbed historic ruins, and it gradually became a tourist attraction. The island is increasingly gaining international attention, not only generally for its modern regional heritage, but also for the undisturbed housing complex remnants representative of the period from the Taisho period to the Showa period. It has become a frequent subject of discussion among enthusiasts for ruins. Since the abandoned island has not been maintained, several buildings have collapsed mainly due to typhoon damage, and other buildings are in danger of collapse. However, some of the collapsed exterior walls have been restored with concrete. The island was formally approved as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in July 2015 as part of Japan's sites of Japan's Meiji Industrial Revolution, iron and steel, shipbuilding and coal mining. In at number 3, Aniva Rock Lighthouse, Russia. The Aniva Lighthouse was built by the Japanese in 1939 on a chunk of rock off the southern coast of Sakhalin just east of Russia. The island was largely uninhabited until the 1800s when both Japan and Russia became interested in annexing it. A ring of lighthouses were built on Sakhalin's rocky coast to signal incoming troop carriers and merchant ships. After around 50 years of sharing the island, the Russians annexed it all in the Second World War, causing 500,000 Japanese to be evacuated back to Hokkaido. In 1951, the Treaty of San Francisco was signed, officially handing tenure over to the Russians. Now the Aniva Lighthouse is abandoned, including its 7 stories of diesel engines, accumulator rooms, keepers' living spaces, radio facilities, storerooms, large clockwork pendulum, and 300 kg pool of mercury. The place now looks like the perfect location for a horror movie, with the building completely deteriorating upon the rock due to the force of the water and wind. However, if you want to visit, you can. Regular tours are organized from Sakhalin's main city. During the 6-day journey, tourists can not only visit the lighthouse but also enjoy the views of the city. Coming in at number 2, Willard Asylum, New York. The Willard Asylum for the Chronic Insane is a former state hospital in Willard, New York near Seneca Lake. The asylum was originally meant to rescue mentally ill people from county facilities where they were typically kept, often chained up or in cages. At Willard, the idea was that patients could be treated and hopefully rejoin society. In reality, Willard was more of a prison than it was a hospital, with patients being kept until the administrators decided they could leave. However, many never did. Worse still, not everyone who found themselves in the asylum were actually insane. Now, as of today, Willard is abandoned, but much of it still remains. The bowling alley built inside its walls during the later years is still standing, with several decaying pins remaining at the end of the lanes. The morgue is also still intact, with the autopsy tables in place next to the drawers where the bodies were stored. Now, in those days when a person died, it was shameful to have one's family name on the grave of a mental hospital. As such, out of respect, none of the graves were marked. Today, efforts are underway to find out who is buried in the graves and replace numbers with names. In the attic is where things have been unearthed though. In 1995, the same year the asylum closed, hundreds of suitcases were discovered in the attic. They had been left behind by the patients who never left the asylum. More than half of the 50,000 patients that came to Willard died within its walls, making this building one of the scariest in history. And finally, coming in at number 1, Pripyat, the Chernobyl abandoned city. Yes, we're discussing an entire city with this one, not just one specific building, because honestly there are way too many. Pripyat is a ghost city in northern Ukraine, near the Ukraine-Belarus border. The city was founded on February 4th, 1970 as the 9th nuclear city in the Soviet Union to serve the nearby Chernobyl nuclear power plant. It was officially proclaimed a city in 1979 and had grown to a population of 49,360 by the time it was evacuated on the afternoon of April 27, 1986, the day after the Chernobyl disaster. The Chernobyl disaster was a nuclear accident that occurred on the 26th of April 1986 at the number 4 nuclear reactor in the Chernobyl nuclear power plant near the city of Pripyat in the north of the Ukrainian SSR. It is to this day considered the worst nuclear disaster in history and is one of only 2 nuclear energy disasters rated at 7, the maximum severity on the International Nuclear Event Scale. scale. The accident began during a safety test on an RBMK-type nuclear reactor, which was commonly used throughout the Soviet Union. During this test, a large amount of energy was suddenly released, vaporizing superheated cooling water and rupturing the reactor core in a highly destructive steam explosion. This was immediately followed by an open-air reactor core fire that released considerable airborne radioactive contamination for about 9 days that precipitated onto parts of the USSR and Western Europe before finally being contained on May 4, 1986. Due to the radiation left behind, the entire city was evacuated, and all that remains are the abandoned buildings and a haunting Ferris wheel standing motionless in time. It had been scheduled to have its official opening 5 days after the disaster, in time for May Day celebrations. The Azure swimming pool and Avanhard Stadium are two other popular tourist attractions. You can only stay there 2 hours, otherwise you die. Coming in at 5, Abandoned Tunnel, Rochester, New York. The Rochester Industrial Rapid Transit Railway, more commonly known as the Rochester Subway, was a light rail rapid transit line in the city of Rochester, New York from 1927 to 1956. This subway was constructed in the bed of the old Erie Canal, which allowed the route to be grade separated for its entire length. The subway was designed to reduce interurban traffic on city streets and to facilitate freight interchange between the railroads. However, the final day of passenger service was on June 30th, 1956. Now, saying that, have you ever stopped to wonder what an abandoned subway tunnel would look like? Well, thanks to some urban explorers, we now know. This picture was taken by a group exploring the dark tunnels in Rochester, New York, and it gives a pretty disturbing idea about what might be down there. All we can see is the dark, bleak walls and some kind of hazmat suit hanging from the ceiling. Very chilling indeed. Coming in at number 4, Abandoned Doll Factory, Spain. I don't know about you, but I don't think many people would jump at the opportunity to explore an abandoned doll factory. A dark, derelict building with hundreds of molds and casts stacked against the barren walls, over tables and on shelves. However, thanks to one brave urban explorer, they explored the dark halls of this Spanish doll factory in Valencia. According to the photographs taken, the now deserted factory is spread out over 3 stories, with a large staircase running up the main tower. It is a creepy building with even creepier pictures. One man even took the time to warn potential visitors not to go there, citing his fears about a potential curse. I quote, "Do not enter the factory. Seriously, I took a doll's head and a box and I had to return it. Now that sight gives me a strong anxiety. There have been rituals." Now the picture itself shows a row of dolls' heads which were known as bisque dolls. They were at the peak of their popularity between 1860 and 1990 and were intended as fashion items, created to represent women and adorned with wigs made from mohair or human hair. The picture is absolutely terrifying, with some of the dolls having a blank stare while others seem as though they are frowning. Regardless of the expression, these dolls are absolutely terrifying. Coming in at number 3, Purple Garment, Belitz-Hillstatten Hospital. Built in 1898, Belitz-Hillstatten Hospital is a now disused hospital complex of approximately 60 buildings located in the district of Belitz-Hillstatten. Between the years of 1898 and 1930, the complex served as a sanatorium for lung diseases, generally housing those with then fatal conditions. During World War I, it served as a field hospital that treated the earliest casualties of new weapons such as machine guns and mustard gas. During this time, it also treated a young soldier named Adolf Hitler, who had been blinded by a British gas attack and wounded in the leg at the Battle of Somme. During World War II, the hospital went on to be used as a Nazi field hospital, treating injured soldiers. Occupied by the Russians in 1945, it served as a Soviet military hospital for the next 50 years until 1995. The complex is now derelict and is the perfect stomping ground for urban explorers, as you would expect. This is just one of many creepy pictures taken in the abandoned hospital. We don't know who the purple garment belonged to, but seeing it strung up with shoes placed under it makes it incredibly unnerving. I think I would rather not know the backstory behind this picture. Coming in at number 2, fire extinguishers, West Park Hospital. West Park Hospital, sometimes referred to as West Park Asylum, was a large psychiatric hospital in Epsom, Surrey. The hospital seems to have been so called because of its location to the west of the landscaped parkland formerly associated with Horton Manor. Now, although it is sometimes referred to as an asylum by urban explorers and the media, West Park was never officially termed as such, having opened as West Park Mental Hospital in 1923. During operation, the hospital catered for around 2,000 patients of mixed class. However, it was slowly run down from the mid-1990s, and by 2003, most of the hospital was closed and derelict, although some buildings, including the New Epsom and Ewell Cottage Hospital, remain in use by NHS Healthcare Services. Due to its derelict state, it came to be of interest to urban explorers who were drawn in by its sheer size and also the many hospital items still inside, such as beds, kitchen equipment, as well as personal items. Now, this picture from the attic of the hospital is sure to send chills down your spine. Discovered by an urban explorer, they reportedly found these fire extinguishers arranged in a pentagram form. Sure makes you wonder what was really going on in the hospital. However, in November 2010, demolition began on the former hospital buildings. As of April 2011, most of the central buildings had been cleared, with only limited number of wards, the water tower and administration building being retained for conversion to apartments. And finally, coming in at number 1, we have Dolls, Chernobyl. As most will know, thanks to the popular HBO series Chernobyl, the Chernobyl disaster was a nuclear accident that happened on April 26th, 1986 at the number 4 nuclear reactor in the Chernobyl nuclear power plant near the city of Pripyat in the north of Ukraine, SSR. It is considered to be the worst nuclear disaster in history and is one of only 2 nuclear energy disasters rated at 7, the maximum severity. The accident began during a safety test on the RBMK type nuclear reactor, which was commonly used throughout the Soviet Union. The test, however, failed and a large amount of energy was released, vaporizing superheated cooling water and rupturing the reactor core in a highly destructive steam explosion. In the accident's aftermath, 237 people suffered from acute radiation sickness, of whom 31 died within the first 3 months. To this day, Pripyat lies abandoned, with the Chernobyl facility haunting its landscape. The city had many abandoned kindergartens, such as the Zolotozh Kluchik or Golden Key. Now, the thought of a kindergarten so close to a nuclear disaster site is absolutely heartbreaking. The idea of small, innocent children being exposed to radiation which will likely kill them is devastating. However, what is absolutely soul-crushing and at the same time chilling is this photo of a plastic doll with grey hair completely naked except for a gas mask. It appears to be splayed out among the remains of a rusty bed abandoned like the rest of the city, slowly taken a hold by nature. The entire thing sends chills down my spine.
Coming in at number 5, we've got the Ground Church Tower. Take one look at this ominous tower poking out of the water and tell me it's not cursed. Or filled with treasure, and the treasure's cursed. Sure, it's a church, and churches are places of peace and light, but this one has a tragic story behind it. It was once a lovely place of worship located in South Tyrol, Italy. Folks would come and participate in some pretty average church activities. However, in the 50s, major change was on the horizon. The town needed a new source of energy. In the end, they decided that building an artificial lake would be the way to go. They filled a wide expanse with water and ended up flooding the church. I suppose it was cheaper just to leave some of the buildings as they were instead of demolishing them first. The result is stunning and a little bit ominous. These days, you can see the bell tower peeking out from the top of the water. The rest of the church is down below, wallowing in the murky depths. It sort of feels like a water level in a video game with plenty to explore and frustration abound. I mean, imagine descending into the depths and wading through the many waterlogged chambers hidden below. There could be anything waiting down there. Spirits of wildlife that may have been caught up in the artificial lake, the long lingering ghosts of old churchgoers doomed to float about. It's fascinating and fear-inducing. Coming in at number 4, we've got the Sorrento Abandoned Mill, another Italian cursed building. If you ever visit Naples, you can take a day and head off the beaten path. A canyon nearby is known as the Valley of the Mills and houses all sorts of awesome structures. Ages and ages ago, a flour mill was built. For years it operated, providing flour to the surrounding regions. In fact, it apparently managed to do so for hundreds of years. And if you're at all familiar with the operation of mills before standard safety practices were introduced, you know they were death traps. So for hundreds of years, folks toiled away, grinding out flour and occasionally some workers. Uh-oh. Now, these deaths didn't mean that the mill had to close, it was seen as an occupational hazard of sorts. But then in the late 19th century, it became isolated from the sea. Tasso Square was built, and this caused the mill to become less practical. Humidity rose in the area, and the mill was forced to shut down. Years later, the building was ultimately closed for good. So we've got a historic mill in a valley closed due to societal progress. Sounds like a recipe for ghosts or a curse to me. If you look at it these days, you'll agree. The mill has been totally overtaken by nature. Greenery has consumed the ancient structure, giving it a foreboding and abandoned look. Moss and lichens cover pretty much every square inch of the walls, essentially daring anyone to come and explore. But be careful if you do, it's hard to tell what might be hidden among the foliage. Maybe a mill worker's ghost missing some essential limbs, or a foreman who lost everything when the grindstones stopped grinding. I hope it was worth it. Progress. Coming in at number 3, we've got the New Bedford Orpheum. Abandoned theaters are cursed as a rule. Like, name one abandoned theater that doesn't have a ghost or urban legend attached. I'll wait. They're magnets for drama, it's in their nature. And this Massachusetts-based art house has a flair for the dramatic like no other. Get this, it opened on the same day that the Titanic went down. Talk about a hot start. It operated for a few decades, showing movies and hosting cultural events. The Orpheum was a staple of local culture at the time. However, in 1958, it closed its doors. Not for good, mind you. It would still open on occasion for extra special events, and was even used by a tobacco company as storage for a little while. But these days, the Orpheum is still and silent. Ghostly, even. A peek inside will reveal a gigantic, sprawling space, complete with mezzanine, private boxes, and faded murals. The peeling paint and crumbling plaster add to the spooky ambiance. A total lack of audience for ages makes for an echoey good time, too. It's everything an old theater should be, including the creepiness. It's decrepit without being condemnable, which has led the community to rally behind efforts to reopen it. However, none of these have been very successful. It seems like the curse extends out, hitting the folks who would even attempt to resurrect it. Would you take a seat in the audience, or are you scared of seeing an unscheduled show? Coming in at number 2, we've got the Sathorn Unique Building. A monument to what could have been the Sathorn Unique Building is an interesting case. What was supposed to be a luxurious, high-rise apartment building ended up being an abandoned husk. Perfect for urban explorers. Back in the 90s, a magnificent tower was planned. It was to be 47 stories tall with over 600 units, housing all sorts of high rollers in Bangkok. Unfortunately, construction had to stop during the 1997 Asian financial crisis. The building itself was about 80% done, but would never be finished in its entirety. Plenty of money, materials, and man-hours were sunk with nothing to show for it. Well, almost nothing. These days, the Sathorn Unique is known as the Ghost Tower. Thrill seekers and graffiti artists love the sprawling building and have pretty much made it their own. The inside is totally filled with spray-painted murals and other forms of street art. Sure, it's dangerous to go running around in abandoned buildings, but try telling that to any of the folks who do it. Aside from the generally unsavory reputation of street art and urban exploring, why is it known as the Ghost Tower? Well, some locals believe the building was built on the site of an ancient graveyard. This unfortunate placement led to construction delays, accidents, and the eventual abandonment. This story is enough to keep anyone but the bravest out of the Ghost Tower. Another theory is that the building cast shadows on the nearby Wat Yad Nawa, an old Buddhist temple. This, while not being worthy of an outright curse, was considered to be unfavorable. Success is hard to achieve while preventing sunlight from reaching Buddhist temples. Recently, the building has achieved some sort of online fame, with many viral videos featuring folks free-running throughout the tower. This resulted in criminal charges being filed against the trespassing videographers. Is that the result of bad luck or a curse?